afternoon. My name is Malcolm Graham. I am the coordinator of the City of Charlotte Housing Community Recovery Task Force, and this is our Thursday, June 25th meeting. I would like to take the opportunity to welcome each and every one of you in the viewing public for being with us today, as well as our task force members. I just want to remind everyone the objectives of the task force, which is to anticipate and plan for Charlotte's post-recovery challenges, given the uncertain economic uncertainties in our city, to listen to the community regarding the challenges people are facing as they navigate the changing work and living environment, to develop recommendations for the City of Charlotte, specifically city government, how we can pivot to support changes needed as a result of COVID-19, and to provide residents with a long-term vision for healthy and a stable economic and civic environment. With that, I would like to first thank Councilmember Eggleston for chairing the meeting for me on last Thursday. Thank you very much. And begin by having a roll call of introducing all the task force members. Again, my name is Malcolm Graham, representing Charlotte City Council District 2 and coordinator of the Housing Task Force.
Good afternoon, Larkin Eggleston, task force member and council member, and you're quite welcome, Councilmember Graham. You were where you needed to be last week.
Good afternoon, Renee Johnson, council member, District 4, and committee member.
Good afternoon, Kathy Cummings with Bank of America and task force member.
Good afternoon, Fred Dodson with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Housing Partnership and member of the task force.
Good afternoon, Kim Graham, Executive Director for the Greater Charlotte Apartment Association, representing rental residents and rental owners in the Charlotte region.
Good afternoon. This is Anthony Lindsay with Caldwell Banker and also a member of the North Carolina Real Estate Commission.
Good afternoon. This is Deronda Metz with the Salvation Army, and I'm representing Charlotte-Mecklenburg Continuum of Care on behalf of those that are homeless in our community.
And we'll have introductions from our staff that's with us here today as well.
Good afternoon, Victoria Johnson, Assistant City Manager for representing the City Manager's Office.
Good afternoon.
Department.
Thank you all for being here today. This is our 10th meeting since April 23rd, so we've been at it for a while. We are doing the work of the people, and with that, let's get right into our agenda with our Workforce Plan 2 Financial Assistance final recommendations. I turn it over to Kathy, Deronda, and Connie.
Thank you, Mr. Graham, and again, our condolences to your family. I know this is a hard time of year, and just pray for continued healing. So with that, I would like to thank the team members that have been working with me, Deronda and Connie, on the effort that they've been putting into this. And we've drafted a couple of additional folks to help us as well. So I would be remiss if I didn't also thank Kim Graham as well as Catherine with the United Way for their assistance as well. So we presented last week, and there were a couple of really great points that were brought up. So the plan has been modified to reflect the feedback from the team, as well as look at what is feasible for an implementation perspective. So if you could go to slide 3, please. We've already reviewed the rest, so let's just jump into the changes in the recommendations. Okay, so the financial assistance work group okay, let's go to the next slide. Let's jump into, slide 4. So back one. Excellent, thank you. So the recommendation, the primary one, is to expand the Charlotte-Mecklenburg COVID-19 Collaborative, representing existing work groups. And currently it's the City of Charlotte and the Housing Recovery Task Force, Mecklenburg County, the Mecklenburg County Continuum of Care, the Housing Partnership, Salvation Army, Foundation for the Carolinas, and United Way. to provide recommendation on the best use of the CARES Act funding. This group have been running several different work streams, and we're hoping that we can, with the collaborative, bring together the collective thoughts of the various groups that are working on the same issue and make sure that we don't have duplication of efforts and that it's a fair and equitable treatment of the folks that need help. Organizations providing services using COVID-19 related funding should perform holistic customer intake to ensure that they're connected to the community resources best equipped to help with the unique household needs. We feel that solving for an issue without solving for all of the issues, or at least understanding what each family is going through individually, and providing them the broader assistance that they're going to need, they're not going to be able to move forward in the struggle that they're currently having. Build on the existing infrastructure of the CMHP's emergency rental and mortgage assistance programs and support the expansion of temporary staffing where needed. This was the presentation that was delivered by Aaron last week. The infrastructure is in place. It's ready to go. There are a couple of changes that I know Aaron and team with the CMHP has been working on that will help facilitate some additional capture of information and coordination. So we feel that that is the right infrastructure to build on. Next slide, please. We feel strongly that landlords who accept CARES Act funding must agree to not discriminate against the applicants based upon their source of income. This is not a little bit of a change. We were saying that they should be willing to accept the housing choice vouchers, but we're just asking simply that the applicants, the tenants, not be discriminated based upon their source of income. We don't do it in lending, and we shouldn't do it in rental. So, to avoid duplication of subsidy allocation and assist the maximum amount of clients impacted by COVID-19, service providers should be required to use data sharing platforms such as HMIS, which is already in place. And then finally, this is another modification based upon recommendations last week. Cities should explore the possibility of providing a prorated tax reimbursement for rental properties serving households earning 80% or less of the area median income. And with that, I'd like to take any questions, comments, and feedback.
Thank you very much for that recommendation for financial assistance. I know this is the second time that the task force is receiving it. You received it last week as well with some amendments today. And so I will open up the floor for any questions that we have from task force members. Any questions? Going once? Going twice? I think that was a very good job. I think we've accepted the recommendations that was presented today, as well as last Thursday. And so can I get a motion from someone to accept these recommendations? And we will
approve the recommendation.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, and let's do a roll call vote. Graham, aye. Eggleston?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Cummings?
Yes.
Dotson?
Hey, I'm here. Yes.
Graham?
Yes.
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Metz?
Yes.
Connie?
Yes.
Is Lee on the call now?
I am on. Thank you. Yes.
And Mr. Braxton,
Yes.
okay. Thank you very much. Very good presentation. I think we're making really good progress on these recommendations. I will be following up with staff regarding not only the recommendations from today, but also the previous one, making sure that we make sure it gets through the system. But I think we're in good shape. I've already had some preliminary conversations, and I know we are doing just that to make sure that these recommendations get on the desk of the City Council as soon as possible. So thank you very much, Deronda and Kathy and Connie for your good work, and we will pivot to our task force number 3 on our work plan, which is evictions, and I turn the meeting over to my good friend Kim Graham. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Councilmember Graham, and thank you to my colleagues on the task force, some of whom I've leaned on as I've worked through focus area number 3. We've talked, I think, a lot about evictions because we felt like it was a pressing matter, as was rent relief during COVID-19. And so some of what you will hear me say will be similar or maybe somewhat reiterating what we've already heard earlier, but I think it's just important to refocus us on those items. I do want to begin by thanking members of the business community as well as lawyers and judges and others who helped to formulate the insights and recommendations that are going to be forthcoming. I'm going to start by thanking Judge Best, District Court Judge, Juan Hernandez with Charlotte Center for Legal Advocacy, Chris Losack with Losack and Brownlee, Norm Prate with Brownlee, Whitlow and Prate, Bill Rowe with the North Carolina Justice Center, Terry Stokes and Mary Williams with the City of Charlotte's Community Relations Committee, and Isaac Sturgill with Legal Aid of North Carolina. And with that, I'll turn to my first slide. So the evictions focus area had 3 tasks. The first was to work with the courts to identify if eviction filings were still occurring. The second was to determine what the scale of eviction hearings will be when the courts reopen, and they have reopened. And then the last was to work with the courts to improve the evictions process. Next slide, please. So before I get into kind of what has been accomplished under those tasks, I just want to set some expectations and give a little bit of context around evictions in general. Evictions are classified by each state. So each state creates its own landlord-tenant laws, and North Carolina has done that as well. North Carolina General Statute 42 creates the context for summary ejectments or evictions in our state. And while that statute talks about the ways in which a landlord could evict a tenant, it also talks about the rights that tenants have, the rights and responsibilities that landlords have, and talks about the methods for evictions, legal and lawful evictions. I have to say that self-help evictions are illegal. We know that self-help evictions do happen. When those happen, they are punishable by law, and landlords that do that should be punished by law. And that evictions are a last resort option, that the costs incurred, vacancy and downtime that it takes to get a unit turned and ready for rent again is the last thing that a landlord wants to do, because landlords incur those costs and do not get to recoup those costs. So I'll put those 2 things out there just to create some context around evictions. Next slide, please. So just some background on what our community has already done around evictions. In 2017, when the very famous book came out by Matthew Desmond called Evicted, Poverty and Profit in the American City, the Mecklenburg County and the City of Charlotte rallied to have Matthew Desmond come here and conduct a community conversation for us. And that was, I think, a very successful community conversation that then led to Mecklenburg County funding a report and research that was conducted by UNC Charlotte's Urban Institute, and it was requested by the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Housing Advisory Board, which is a volunteer board that makes policy recommendations around housing for our community. Next slide, please. So there were 4 key findings that came out of that report. The first was that there was a need for increased education on legal rights and responsibilities for tenants, I think, primarily, but also for landlords. I think it was found that tenants just weren't aware of all of the rights that they had as renters and all the things that they could do, especially in cases where they were being evicted illegally, or if the landlord wasn't holding up his or her responsibility to the tenant. And many of those came out of discussions with Charlotte Center for Legal Advocacy and Legal Aid of North Carolina. The second key finding was that something needed to be done to reduce the negative impact of evictions on tenants. And we talked about that as a task force over the last 10 weeks. Just how do you mitigate the barriers to a tenant who's been evicted getting into rental housing in the future, or having them be prevented from even purchasing a home in the future because their credit scores have been damaged severely because of an eviction action. Next slide, please. The third key finding was that we may want to consider providing long-term case management. And we've talked about that some as well as a task force, especially under the financial assistance focus area, where financial literacy and workforce development opportunities are being incorporated into programs like the program that the Housing Partnership has put forward. And then the last key finding was that we needed to increase as a community affordable housing options and living wages. And that's something that I think as a community we've talked about a lot here this last year or two. And that's probably part of the impetus for the $50 million bond referendum that we had in 2018. But we've definitely talked about increasing opportunities for working families to earn more income so that they would be less likely to be housing cost burden. Next slide, please. So just talking about some of the trends that were found around evictions, because evictions, again, they go up, they go down. And from 2005 to 2015, it was found that on balance, evictions went down in our community with the exception of the 2-year spike where we had the housing recession in 2008 to 2010. And that trend has actually continued. We're seeing annual evictions in the realm of 25,000 per year. We were at a high of almost 40,000 in 2005. Next slide, please. So going back to the task for this particular focus area, the first being working with courts to identify if eviction filings are still occurring. And we did hear from Judge Kimberly Best as well as Judge Trosh early on in our task force meetings to tell us that, in fact, the eviction filings or summary ejectment filings had been growing since March, and they were at a low of about 300. And by the time we got to the end of May, we were up to almost 1,800 or more summary ejectments and 140 plus appeals after eviction. And then 3B, to determine what the scale of eviction hearings will be when the courts reopen. We also heard from Judge Best and her team, as well as the City of Charlotte's dispute resolution program, that between the two of them, they were working really hard to ensure that we had mediators available to the community who were going to provide free services and outreach opportunities for families who were experiencing eviction, as well as landlords who might be amenable to having their court cases mediated. I think what's worth acknowledging is that research has found that about 35% of all eviction cases are settled voluntarily. And additionally, in 2016, and it holds true today, that about 17% of summary ejectment cases actually move forward to an actual eviction, and someone actually being moved out of their home. So there's a lot of room between 35% that are voluntarily dismissed and the 17% that actually are evicted and have a writ of possession acted upon. Next slide, please. And so the last task, and I think that the task that we spent a lot of time deliberating on has been working with courts to improve the evictions processes. Because again, we know that evictions can be very damaging to reputations, ability to obtain housing in the future, and we don't want to exacerbate our homelessness problem in Mecklenburg County. And so and I think probably one of the more effective and clearly time-honored processes that are in place is the mediation program as an alternative to evictions. The City of Charlotte has had a dispute resolution program under its Community Relations Committee since 1983. Those services are provided free to tenants and landlords on a referral basis, but they don't require an actual formal referral. Anyone can call the dispute resolution program and ask for assistance with mediation. That's a tenant, that's a landlord, doesn't matter your income. And so the program has 5 staff members, about 50 volunteers, and they conduct outreach to tenants pre and post eviction filing. And again, the agreements that are entered into through mediation are binding. And we will hear hopefully from that team to give us an update on how many mediation meetings they've conducted since we've gone back to the courts a little over a week ago. Next slide, please. And then the last piece in terms of protecting tenants and protecting tenants' rights, and this has come up with our task force, is just around how do we ensure that credit reports are not damaged beyond repair? How do we ensure that money judgments that are satisfied don't follow renters after an eviction, down the line? And so about 2018, 2017, the Greater Charlotte Apartment Association, along with the North Carolina Justice Center, drafted proposed legislation for the North Carolina General Assembly to adopt. And that legislation is entitled Post-Judgment Relief Agreements. And so the legislation, which is really brief in terms of legislation, it's set forth here on the next few slides. And it is essentially a way for a tenant who's had an eviction hearing found against them to satisfy a judgment and have that judgment wiped off of their record, where it wouldn't impede them from being able to successfully secure a rental in the future. And so you'll see here in these next few slides kind of the legalese, but I'll just unpack it a little bit. Let's move forward a couple of slides till we get to a highlight. Okay, we'll stop here. So essentially, a motion could be filed by the renter who had an eviction, and that motion would essentially have that judgment cleared, and it would be recorded with the courts. The judgment is recorded with the courts. They owe X amount of dollars to the former landlord, and once they make payments on that judgment and pay it off fully, the judgment would then be removed from their record permanently. Next slide, please. Actually, you can go to the next slide with the highlight. Thank you. And so what's important about this whole legislation is that it has teeth. It has an accountability measure for the landlord that forces them to actually follow through on what they're supposed to do so that the judgment doesn't follow the renter. And if they do not record the satisfaction with the court, they could be required to pay monetary judgment to the tenant and it could be in the amount of unpaid rent. It could be attorney's fees and costs. It could be a number of different damages. But this will ensure that the landlord actually records the satisfaction of the judgment paid with the court system. This is not in place right now, which is why you see a lot of these judgments following renters along and making it impossible for them to rent in the future or to buy a home or a car or something else that requires a credit check. Next slide, please. And so with that, we will essentially be crafting those last two items into recommendations for this focus area. Those will be presented next week for the task force consideration and for a vote. And with that, I will open up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, for that presentation. I also want to thank you for all the pre-work that you did. I know you had a number of conversations outside of the scope of the task force in terms of getting ready for this presentation and your assignments. So I want the task force members to know that a lot of work went into this outside of our meetings, and I want to thank Kim for pulling a lot of people together and getting a lot of input in those in her assignment. So I really appreciate that. So with that, I will open it up for questions from the task force members to Ms. Graham. Good afternoon, Ms. Johnson.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Kim, for the wonderful presentation. I know how much work you put into that, and I look forward to that coming before council. We in the housing arena know how impactful and the huge barrier that evictions are on individuals' records. And I was trying to backtrack to remember who presented to the task force the data of housing barriers, because I think that information will be important to present to council and to present to legislators if we're able to do that, to demonstrate how impactful that eviction is on the record, because I don't think that people realize that. When we say barriers to affordable housing, people automatically think the housing cost or the income instability, but we know that the evictions and criminal records have a huge impact also. So I don't know if we can backtrack. I've been looking for it, look for that data. If there could be, I envision like a pie graph, like barriers to affordable housing. And I don't know if we've seen the pie graph, but that would be so helpful as a visual aid to help persuade and the decision makers and to educate them on how big of a problem this is. So can we get that? And I know I've spoken to some of the housing task force members, but if we could get that information compiled just as a handout or a visual aid to really show what the barriers are, I think that would help us when we present this information or when this information is presented to full council.
Point well taken, Ms. Johnson, and I got a nod from Ms. Weidman that we can accomplish that goal, and so we'll put that on our to-do list to get prepared for you.
Well, thank you, because we've received the information. I just can't. I just don't know that it was an actual graph or something simple to understand and to present. So I know we've heard it, but I'd just like to be able to see it and share it.
Okay, we'll take care of that for you.
Thank you.
Mr. Winston, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Ms. Graham. Ms. Graham and I were able to talk, have a pretty good conversation about this work around evictions when it was started. So happy to see how this work has been turning out. I just have a question about the recommendation around the proposed legislation. Would that recommendation come to council as a suggestion of what we should include on our state legislative agenda? Is that the intent?
Yes, that is absolutely the intent, is to have council included in either its short session or long session legislative agenda. And it'll have enough data, hopefully, to help you all make that decision and move forward with it as well.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that as well. Commissioner Lindsay, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Graham. I just had a question. Kim, first of all, great job. Thanks for all the work you put into this. You mentioned that the number of evictions that actually resulted in displacement or repossession of property was about 17%. And I'm assuming that's based on prior analysis of the data. I'm wondering if we have a sense of what the real numbers look like, not just a percentage, but what those real numbers are, and kind of how we're trending based on what's going on right now. Do we have some sense of either one of those numbers?
Thank you for that question. That's actually an excellent question. So the number on a monthly basis is around 350 evictions. That's the real number to that 17%. And I wish we had good data right now. It only takes a couple of years to compile that evictions data, just because there are so many layers to it. And a lot of that will come from the court system. UNCC's Urban Institute has been kind of the leading gatherer of that data. And so we could probably go back to them. It may be a recommendation for us to have the city or the county commission a report from them on evictions related to COVID-19 or evictions during the year span, maybe January 1 of 2020 through December 31 of 2020, to see what the impact of COVID-19 has been on housing evictions.
Yeah, I think that piece of data would be very important also when we start talking about barriers. It'll certainly give a good sense of the number of people who may be impacted. So those two things really kind of tie together in my mind. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Hello, Lee. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Kim, for the presentation. Very, very helpful. Good seeing you again, too. I want to put you on the spot because I actually don't know if you even know the answer to this, but I'm asking the group maybe do you have a sense, or can you describe kind of the current state? You said the courts have reopened. So during the March to now, I think, maybe correct me, evictions were still being, I guess, filed or presented. And so what's happening now? Is it kind of, we have a backlog of a certain number of evictions that now are going to just start moving through that process? Or how does that do you know much about how that's going to work?
I do, actually. I know a lot about it because there have been so many meetings about it.
Yeah.
So what we have is kind of a parallel. When the committee from the courts last met, which was at the end of May, it was calculated that between the judicial hearings and mediators, volunteer mediators, that the courts could handle about 300 cases a week in a 5-day span. And there was, a lot of breakdown in looking at how many each judge could handle designated courtrooms, how many in-person and over the phone mediations could be handled. And so 300 was about the number that we got at. We had 1,800 that had been filed. I estimate that of those 1,800, about 500 or so, maybe a little over 500, would be dismissed voluntarily, kind of getting at that 35% of what's filed doesn't actually even go to court. And so that leaves us about 1,200 that would have to be heard or docketed, and those could have also been resolved in some other way. And so if you use the 300 number per 5-day period, and the 1,200 that we had, we looked at clearing up that backlog in about 4 weeks, if all things work well together. I do know that there's a meeting today at 2 p.m. Of the courts committee, and so I'm going to sit in on that for an update on kind of what the real number is in terms of what they still have to hear.
And I don't mean to anticipate next week, but remind me, then you may have to go back to the presentation, is part of your recommendations, does the city effectively have a role to play, I guess, in terms of how to, in that process of those 1,200 with the mediators and everything going on, is part of your recommendations going to be about how the city can help in one way or another with that whole backlog and what's going to happen and how many of those folks actually go all the way through and end up being evicted and now are out, like that kind of thing.
Right. So I think what you're getting at is kind of what will the city be left with in terms of people who may need to be rehoused if they're displaced from their housing because of an eviction act. And I would say that might end up back in you and Fred's court around affordable housing. So be careful what you raise up. But that is a real issue, right? I mean, some of those families that are evicted may end up moving from Charlotte. I think that there's a real likelihood that there will be families who will move from Charlotte because the cost of living was already too high for them, right? And so if they're evicted and can't find additional housing here, then they might not be able to stay here. We know that our shelters and alternative housing is already overburdened. We know that if we drive past the men's shelter any day of the week. And so what can we do? I think I try to be realistic about what our city can actually do and what resources are available there. But I do think that we will have to ask ourselves, what role does the city have to play, if any role, for rehousing families that are displaced that can't find housing, alternative housing.
Just as a last follow-up, if you don't mind. So actually I agree, that's ultimately we'll have to deal with that. I was thinking more short-term in the sense of, is there going to be a role for the city to play now that we have CARES funding and rental subsidy kind of in place to avoid the eviction? So maybe 2 months ago that household didn't have an option to pay current, but can they now apply for CARES funding to get current so they don't become part of the population that needs to be rehoused?
And so that's a great question, comment as well, because the city's dispute resolution program actually took information to the courts. I think 1,800 flyers went over to the courthouse at the beginning of the week, and it had information about the mediation program, but it also had information about the rental assistance program. Excuse me. And so there may be that opportunity for the mediators to refer folks who are going through eviction to that program so that they can get that assistance and avert the eviction. And that's likely as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Winston.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Thank you, Mr. Cochran, for asking that question. Because I think you and Ms. Graham posed the question: what should the city's role? Should the city play a role with those 17% of the evictions that go through? So what I see that is presented is that we have a donut hole right here, right now. We have city options for dealing with the eviction process before there's a judgment through this mediation process, which is a good thing. We have the long-term affordable housing solutions for all people, including those that have eviction barriers that we're working on. But we don't have that answer for what is our role to play immediately following that judgment. Mr. Cochran and Ms. Graham might not be able to speak on behalf of the city or suggest where we should go. But I would ask my colleagues and our staff members, how do we start to answer that question? Because if the point of this task force is to provide solutions around COVID relief, that is a big portion of the COVID relief that our community needs, the evictions that do go through. So I think we should pivot, take these very good things that Ms. Graham has laid out on the table to deal with the pre-eviction, the long-term aspects of it as through legislation and things like that. But we do need to attack the issue of what happens the minute after that judgment comes down in the courts. And I think that's what our community is going to expect us to talk about and work on coming out of this task force.
Point well taken. I think Ms. Whiteman wants to add something to that as well, but I tend to agree with you.
And Mr. Winston and committee, that is a point very well taken. I think a starting point for us, and we don't have all the answers, and certainly something, to your point, Mr. Winston, we need to begin to fill that donut hole. One of the things that I would suggest that we could do, continue to do, is to the extent that we know something is headed toward eviction, to maybe help not have a tenant get an eviction on their record for all the reasons we've talked about, is somehow have a link with partners like Community Link to help that person start to identify some alternative housing or other housing. That's kind of one of their secret sauces to help find housing. They have connections with partners. So again, points well taken. Don't have all the answers today, but what I wanted to raise up, if we know something is headed toward an eviction, maybe tweak our processes so that we can be more proactive to help people on the front end.
Mr. Lindsay.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of echo some of what's been said, but also to highlight that when we talk about 300 or 350 evictions, we're talking about households, not individuals. So people need to, in their mind, put a multiplier on that number when we talk about how many individuals are really being impacted. And in some cases, that's 4. Sometimes it may be 5 or more who are being impacted. So that 350 number could actually be 4 times that. So just kind of put that out there so everybody keeps that in mind as we're talking about the real impact on the community.
I was thinking the same thing, Mr. Lindsay. Good comments. Ms. Johnson, Councilmember Johnson.
You. I would agree with him if we could catch those individuals, especially for the COVID-related individuals, because there is assistance for them. So the issue is communicating or getting to them to give them information about the assistance. So one of the ways that we could do that, and I don't know if it's the city or one of the partners, is actually the partners to attend the court hearing. If you've ever gone to certain types of hearings, there are advocates in the courtroom to work with the litigants and provide information. So if possibly we got the docket for eviction hearings and to hear or find out if they're COVID related, and to educate those folks before the actual hearing, that could be an option to prevent the actual eviction that are COVID related with the COVID dollars.
That's a valid point, but I think that's where the mediation comes in prior to, because the goal is not even to get them to come to mediation. And so I think our goal is to try to catch them before they even get to the courtroom. And what we're doing, I think Kim has said this before, we're supplying the judges with all the resources that are out there that we have provided, so that when they sit down with that litigant and that plaintiff, that the judge, him or herself, has those resources available, so we can hopefully use that as a backstop as well. But I hear your point, though.
Yeah, and that's a proactive approach, and I absolutely agree. But we're not getting the numbers that we could get. Even sharing the information about the dispute settlement process with one of the local hotels in my district, they're not getting the response. So the proactive approach is absolutely the most effective. But if we're not reaching everyone, this would still be a backup procedure.
Point well taken. Mr. Lindsay?
Yeah, I think that we're kind of talking around this issue here, and the real question is, what can we do right now to increase the availability of what we used to call transitional housing? I mean, this point has come up before. We need to really look at that question. I think right now we talk about it as rapid rehousing, but that's the real question is, what are we able to do to provide additional transitional housing units to meet some of this need, and also to keep those units in inventory because they will continue to be needed. We know that that is a growing population, and so we will need more units. And so I think we've got to do a little bit of work around programmatically approaching how do we secure units that can be utilized for the transition process, and also making sure that when people are in a position to move out of those units, that we allow them to move out of those units and not have them be under contracts that require them to stay there beyond the point of their real need, which is for housing. So I think we've got to look at that whole process again and identify additional units and figure out how do we get them into the program, and then make sure that the tenancy of those individuals and those households is really based on a case management approach, which I know we do today. I know we have a case management approach for that. So we've got to look at expanding both of those, the number of units, and also the availability of that case management service. So when people are able to move up and move out, we help them to do that. So I just want to make that point as well.
I think that's point well taken, and I just want to remind the task force that we do have allocated $2 million for supportive housing, so those dollars are currently on the street, but I think your point is well taken, Mr. Lindsay, in terms of going back to our original question when we first started this task force is how do we identify housing for folks, and I think Ms. Wyman wants to kind of make a comment as well.
Yeah, I would just echo what Mr. Graham said, and then just add to that. I just want to highlight that Deronda at the Salvation Army Women's Shelter and both the men's shelter, that was one of the things that we had lots of conversation about. If you recall, early on with the first round of kind of COVID funding we said we didn't just want to pay rent for people who were in transition, but we wanted to make sure that they were being connected to resources so that when they are ready to transition, they can transition properly. But point well taken, we can never do enough of that. So you're absolutely right.
Okay, any additional questions? All right, so we look forward to Mrs. Graham coming back on next week to make those final recommendations from Task Force Work Group 3, and I think we're on our way. Thank you, Ms. Graham. The next agenda item is Mary Williams. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you all once again for having me here to provide an update. Some of the information Ms. Graham has already provided, but I wanted to kind of give you an update of where we are and what we are seeing so far. Our marketing efforts, we have put our DSP flyers, has gone out to the social serve. We've sent them out to Heal Charlotte, has been willing to send out some information for us. The Enlace Group, our Magistrate's Office, and the Greater Charlotte Apartment Association, as well as the city's Urban Planning Department and the Housing and Neighborhood Services have put our information on their social media platforms. We've also provided information to our CRC 45-member board so they can share with their networks. We do, just this morning, we have our When You Rent book that has just been updated. It is now on our homepage, and that is at charlottenc.gov/community relations. And that has some information about the responsibilities for tenants as well as landlords. And it should be a good tool for for individuals to be able to see some of that information, as well as some of the legislation that Ms. Graham has mentioned, but that has been put on our homepage as of this morning. Ms. Graham has already spoke to this, but the clerk of court's office last Friday sent out 540 notifications that contained our flyer, and those went to individuals that have summary ejectment cases. They're going to be sending out another 270 notices out tomorrow, is what I'm being told. We have a meeting this afternoon, as Ms. Graham mentioned, with the Civil Courts Committee, so we will be getting any updated case referral information from them and any other suggestions they have for our program. We're still trying to get the word out about our services, the presentations we've made, and I want to thank you all for allowing us to continue to speak to the Housing Task Force. We've also been speaking to the Civil Courts Committee, the Enlace Group, and thank you, Councilwoman Johnson, for allowing us to speak to the Civic Faith Group meeting that you held. I do appreciate that. Legal Aid has been our partner. They've been providing additional trainings on the CARES Act to our CRC staff as well as our mediators. And we really believe that many of these cases can be resolved through the process if we bring the parties together to discuss their concerns and have them develop the options that's going to work for them to resolve their situation. I mean, our goal is to keep tenants in their homes and also to have landlords receive the payment options that will satisfy their needs. So we have heard from many landlords that are now reviewing their records, and they're going to be providing us a list of tenants that they wish to do mediation for. So we have some promises in that regard. As Councilwoman Johnson mentioned, we have heard from a hotel that currently their guests are not interested in mediation, but I have extended the invitation that if anything changes, our office is always here to try to assist. They would just need to call us, and we would try to schedule a mediation accordingly. Currently, we're fielding calls about repair issues, mold issues, legal rights, and we have been referring those cases as needed to environmental health, legal aid. And then we are starting to see some increase in information about rental assistance, and we have been referring cases to crisis assistance as well as trying to get cases scheduled in mediation. Just this morning, we started receiving actual case numbers. So we started getting calls from individuals that had actually received their notification of court that had our flyer attached. So we're thinking that the information is now getting to those 540 individuals that the court sent out. But as already been mentioned, we have always been trying to get as many cases resolved prior to any court involvement. So if any time a landlord or a tenant has a concern, then we're trying to get them to be willing to at least have a conversation, try the mediation process, and see if we can work it out so they don't have to go into the court system. So we're still at the process of trying to get as much of our information out there. We appreciate all of our partners and all of our assistants of trying to get the information to as many people as possible. And we're still working hard. We still got our mediators ready and waiting to do as many mediations as we can. And like I said, we do have, right now, most of the landlords that are calling us will be providing us the information. They're just going through their logs. They just wanted to find out, I guess, exactly what we would be able to offer before they started sending cases our way. So with that, I'll take any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Ms. Williams, and your department and staff for the work that you're doing in terms of the mediation, forward-looking for our community. The word's getting out there. I've heard it here and there from friends of mine within the system, the court system, that they have the information about the services that you are rendering. They are knowledgeable about the resources that we have on the ground to assist in that effort. And so our goal, as Ms. Johnson said earlier, is just making sure that the right people get the right information at the right time. And obviously, we can't force people to go into mediation. We can strongly encourage that. But again, our job is to let people know that the services are there, that they're available, that there are resources attached to it as well, and hopefully that'll make a difference in our community. So, any questions for Mrs. Williams? Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. I wanted to know if there are any public service announcements about the dispute settlement process, such as through the radio or television or through our government channel. I still advocate that we use that billboard on the Drury parking lot that I sent over the picture to you, Mr. Graham. But I really think just educating the public is what's going to help, and what a benefit this is, and the long-term benefit of not having the eviction on their record. So are we doing any mass messaging besides the flyers?
Currently, Councilwoman Johnson, we have started with the flyers, and of course that was working with the courts and making sure that they could get the mailings out. The partners have sent our information out, and then there's a couple of platforms on social media, thanks to Housing and Neighborhood Services, have put their information out on some of their feeds. We have not actually put anything out via radio or TV yet, but that is a good suggestion. That's something we can definitely look into. We just wanted to make sure that we were accomplishing what the court had asked us to do. First thing is to make sure that we had a flyer that they could put in their mailings. We would be willing to look into those options to, again, get the information out to as many people as possible. So thank you for that suggestion. And if you want to put our information on any billboard, we would allow that as well.
Well, I'm for it, and the reason why, because if the person is in that position where they're receiving notices from the court, yes, they look at them, but that's just not a great time to persuade people. If we can get that information out proactively, they may not be looking at all of the inserts. That's just a really bad time for people. So if we can get that information to them before they actually need to use it, I think may help additionally.
Point well taken.
We will reach out to our corporate communications department and look at some of those other radio options. So thank you very much.
Okay, now thank you, Ms. Williams, for that presentation, and please stay close to us to keep us updated and informed as we move through the courts as they are now open. So thank you very much. Any lead updates? Feel free to give a 2-minute commercial, or feel free not to. That's fine as well. Hello, Deronda. Ms. Metz?
Sorry. Good afternoon, Councilman Graham. Thank you for your leadership and everything that you're doing in the community, and to all the other council members as well. So I'm working with a group, and we've really been focused on this hotel situation. As we talk about eviction and prevention, we understand that a lot of families were living in hotels, and it was their housing. I mean, we've met families that have lived in hotels for 3 to 5 years. So what's interesting, and an aha moment that I had, is I was on a call yesterday with the state, just trying to learn what other communities in North Carolina are doing around families, individuals being evicted from hotels. And it seems like it is a problem that's unique to Charlotte. So that says something about our housing market. What we know about those individuals and those households that are living in hotels is they have a lot of barriers to housing, whether it's criminal records, whether it was eviction. So I'm really appreciated the discussion and the opportunity to get some of those households out of the hotels. So we do have a group that is trying to get the data. We have a case management team made up of different providers, and but that is definitely on our radar as well as the courts are opening up. And I just want to continue to keep that in front of you, and also at the same time saying thank you for the support, but we'll be looking for whatever support, especially for dollars that have to be spent by December. So if we have funding in the community through the CARES Act, because these are families we can get out. We know we can't save everybody, but we definitely have an opportunity to get those families that were impacted by COVID-19 out of those hotel situations. So just wanted to update you all on that, and I'd like to keep you updated as we progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and again, thank you for what all you're doing out there as well. I know you're on the front lines doing a lot of good work, so we want to thank you as well. That's it. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I would love to throw something on the floor for the task force consideration. I've been getting a lot of emails and some phone calls about a little bit of fatigue. This is our 10th straight meeting since April, and I think there's an opportunity for us to kind of compile the agenda a little for us to meet next Thursday, and then maybe take a 2 weeks hiatus to give everybody an opportunity to kind of clear their heads and step away for a little bit and come back recharge. And so if there's not any objection, what I'm proposing is that we will come back on next Thursday to get Kim's final recommendations, and that we will take a 2 week break, allow me and the staff to kind of catch up internally with some of the recommendations that was already made, and kind of make sure that's going through the system properly, and then reconvene on July 23rd if it's the desire of the task force. So any comments in reference to that adjustment of our work plan and our schedule?
Councilmember Graham, while you're taking suggestions and while you're taking recommendations for break, I definitely had planned a vacation for next Thursday, but then I saw that I was due for recommendations. I would love for us to take next Thursday off and push it back so that I can take my vacation day on Thursday. It is leading into the 4th of July weekend. I would love to go away.
Well, you were the only reason why I wanted to be respectful of your presentation, and if you are willing to defer those recommendations so that you could take a well-earned vacation, I'm okay with that as well. And we'll just send something out to the task force about adjusting the calendar, and I think we can send something out that will make everybody happy and still stay consistent in terms of the workflow. So if you will allow me and Ms. Whiteman, task force members, to kind of work out the logistics of that and send something out to each one of you, I think we can make those adjustments. Any suggestions or any pushback? Hearing none, so look forward to an email coming from us this week. Plan on no meeting for next Thursday for sure, and then we'll announce what the new revised schedule looks like. It may be a 1 or 2 week hiatus, but we'll work out the logistic and communicate with everyone. And again, I'll just say this: I really appreciate everyone. I mean, it's been 10 straight Thursdays. I think the attendance has been perfect from everyone. The information that has been presented and voted upon has been, I think, forward-thinking. Obviously, there's more work to be done, but I just want to thank everyone for your input, your participation, and your commitment to public service. Thank you very much. And with that, enjoy your vacation. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Happy vacation, Kim.
Be safe traveling, Kim.
Thank you.